Elias Trent stood silently by the observation window, his hands clasped behind his back as he gazed out at the vast expanse of Zenith Station. The station was a colossal structure, its shimmering metallic surface reflecting the faint glow of distant stars. It hung in the void like a cathedral of the cosmos, its spires and domes stretching outward in every direction. Around it, ships of every imaginable design flitted to and fro, their movements like a swarm of fireflies circling a radiant beacon. Some vessels were sleek and elegant, their hulls smooth and reflective, while others were jagged and utilitarian, their exteriors bristling with strange, alien machinery. Elias had always marveled at the diversity of the Syndicate's member species. Each ship was a testament to the unique cultures and technologies of its creators, a kaleidoscope of ingenuity that spoke to the vastness of the galaxy. Yet, as he watched the endless traffic, a strange unease settled over him. The sheer scale of Zenith Station, the constant activity, the hum of alien life, none of it brought him the pride he once felt when humanity had first joined the Syndicate. Instead, it made him feel small, insignificant, like a single thread in an impossibly vast tapestry he could never hope to unravel. Elias's reflection stared back at him from the glass. His sharp features were set in a thoughtful frown, his dark eyes scanning the scene before him as if searching for answers. 3 years. 3 years humanity had been part of the Syndicate, and in that time, they had proven themselves invaluable. Humans were problem solvers, diplomats, innovators. Other species marveled at their adaptability, praised their ingenuity. But lately, Elias had begun to notice something he couldn't quite explain. The praise felt hollow, the smiles of their alien counterparts too practiced, too calculated. It was as if humanity were being used. The sound of hurried footsteps pulled him from his thoughts. He turned to see Dr. Myra Caldwell approaching, her lab coat billowing slightly as she walked. Her face was pale, her expression tight with worry. Myra was not someone who frightened easily. She had spent years studying alien biology and psychology, immersing herself in the complexities of Syndicate species. She was sharp, composed, and unshakable, or so Elias had thought. "Elias," she said, her voice low but urgent. She glanced around the corridor, her eyes darting to the passing figures of Syndicate personnel, some humanoid, others distinctly alien in form. "We need to talk." "Not here. Too many ears." Elias's brow furrowed. Myra's tone was enough to unsettle him, but it was the look in her eyes that truly gave him pause. There was fear there, raw and unguarded, a vulnerability he had never seen in her before. "What's going on?" he asked, his voice steady despite the unease curling in his chest. "Not here," she repeated, her tone insistent. She stepped closer, lowering her voice to a near whisper. "Meet me in my lab later. I'll explain everything then. Just, don't tell anyone, not yet." Elias hesitated, searching her face for answers she wasn't ready to give. Myra had always been a pillar of reason, a voice of calm in the chaos of intergalactic politics. If something had shaken her this deeply, it could only mean trouble. "All right," he said finally, his voice firm. "I'll be there." Myra nodded, her relief evident, though it did little to soften the tension in her features. Without another word, she turned and walked away, her steps quick and purposeful. Elias watched her go, a knot tightening in his stomach. He turned back to the window, his gaze drifting once more to the bustling activity outside. The lights of Zenith Station twinkled like distant stars, their brilliance masking the darkness that lurked beneath. Something was wrong. He could feel it in the air, in the way Myra had looked at him, in the faint but persistent sense of unease that had been gnawing at him for weeks. For the first time since humanity had joined the syndicate, Elias felt a flicker of doubt, a cold, creeping suspicion that the alliance they had worked so hard to build might not be what it seemed. As the distant hum of starships filled the silence, Elias turned and walked away from the window, his mind racing with questions he wasn't sure he wanted answered. Elias stepped into Myra's lab, the sterile, white walls glowing faintly under the hum of artificial light. The room was cluttered with holographic displays and alien artifacts, the remnants of Myra's endless research. Despite the chaos, the air felt heavy, as if the very space around them carried the weight of something unspeakable. Myra stood near a console, her back to him, her fingers trembling slightly as she sifted through data on a glowing screen. "Myra," Elias began, his voice low but steady, "what's going on?" She turned to face him, and for a moment, he barely recognized her. The calm, composed scientist he had always known was gone. Her face was pale, her eyes wide and bloodshot, shadows of sleepless nights etched beneath them. She looked like someone who had seen the edge of a dark abyss and barely managed to pull herself back. "I didn't want to believe it," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I kept telling myself I was wrong, that I had misinterpreted the data. But I can't ignore it anymore, Elias. It's all here." She gestured to the console, and with a wave of her hand, a series of holograms lit up the space between them. Brain scans, genetic sequences, and charts filled the air, each one more complex than the last. Elias stared at them, his brow furrowing as he tried to make sense of the swirling images. "What am I looking at?" he asked, his tone cautious. Myra took a deep breath, steadying herself. "This is data I've been gathering for months. Genetic profiles, neurological patterns, behavioral studies. It's from every species in the syndicate, spanning thousands of years." She paused, her voice trembling as she continued. "Elias, the syndicate isn't what we think it is. They've been changing us. All of us." Elias's stomach tightened. "Changing us? What do you mean?" Myra stepped closer, her eyes locking onto his with an intensity that made his skin crawl. "The Unity protocols," she said, her voice heavy with dread. "They're not just rules or guidelines for cooperation. They're tools of control. The syndicate has been suppressing traits in its member species: independence, aggression, curiosity, anything that might make them question authority or resist compliance. They've been doing it for thousands of years, altering genetics, manipulating behavior. And now, they're doing it to us." Elias's breath caught in his throat. He stared at her, his mind racing to process what she was saying. "You're telling me, they're trying to change who we are? As a species?" Myra nodded, her expression grim. "It's already started. The medical treatments they've been introducing, the so-called health advancements, they're not just curing diseases. They're rewriting our DNA, slowly but surely. In 2 years, Elias, we won't be the same. We won't even think the same." The room felt colder, the air thicker. Elias's heart pounded in his chest, a mix of anger and fear surging through him. "Why?" he demanded, his voice rising. "Why would they do this?" "Control," Myra said simply, her voice bitter. "The syndicate thrives on order, on obedience. They can't afford to have species that think for themselves, that might challenge their authority. So they make us compliant. They take away the parts of us that make us, us." Elias turned away, running a hand through his hair as he tried to steady himself. The weight of her words pressed down on him like a crushing tide. Humanity had joined the syndicate in hopes of a brighter future, of unity and progress. But now, that dream was crumbling before his eyes. Before he could respond, the lab's comm system crackled to life, a voice cutting through the silence. "Myra, Elias, this is Voss. I need you both in the briefing room immediately. You're not going to believe what we've found." Elias exchanged a glance with Myra, her expression shifting from fear to cautious determination. Without a word, they left the lab, the tension between them palpable. When they arrived in the briefing room, Commander Liam Voss was waiting for them, his face lit by the glow of a large holographic display. Voss was a rugged man, his uniform slightly disheveled, his eyes sharp and alert. He looked like someone who had seen too much and carried it all on his shoulders. "What is it, Voss?" Elias asked, his voice still tinged with the weight of Myra's revelation. Voss gestured to the hologram, which displayed a star map marked with a single glowing point. "We were conducting a routine survey in a restricted Sector 1 the Syndicate insists is off limits. We found this." The hologram shifted, revealing an image of a massive structure floating in the void. It was ancient, its surface scarred and weathered, its design unlike anything Elias had ever seen. "It's a defense system," Voss explained. "Automated, heavily armed, and incredibly advanced. But here's the strange part: it responded to our signals. Old human signals, from before we joined the syndicate. It granted us safe passage, ignored our syndicate codes entirely." Elias stared at the image, his mind racing. "What does that mean?" "It means," Voss said, his tone grim, "that there were others before us. Species who resisted the syndicate, who fought back. And the syndicate erased them. Wiped them from history like they never existed." Myra's theory suddenly felt all too real. The pieces were falling into place, each revelation more horrifying than the last. The syndicate wasn't just an alliance, it was a machine of control, a system designed to crush dissent and erase any trace of those who dared to defy it. Elias felt a cold chill run down his spine as he looked at Myra and Voss. "If they erase those species," he said softly, "what's stopping them from doing the same to us?" The room fell silent, the weight of the truth pressing down on all of them. For the first time, Elias realized just how precarious humanity's position truly was. They weren't allies of the syndicate. They were pawns in a game far older and more dangerous than they had ever imagined. Back on Earth, the air was thick with tension as General Alina Drake and Dr. Roland Vega sat in a dimly lit conference room, the walls lined with screens displaying streams of data. Outside, the sprawling cityscape of New Geneva was bathed in the soft glow of twilight, the silhouette of towering skyscrapers standing stark against the fading light. Inside, however, the atmosphere was anything but serene. Alina leaned forward, her eyes fixed on the holographic display hovering above the table. Her expression was one of steely determination, yet beneath it lay a simmering anger that threatened to boil over. She had dedicated her life to protecting humanity, to ensuring their place among the stars. Now, it seemed, that very future was under threat. Dr. Roland Vega, a brilliant scientist with a mind as sharp as his gaze, stood beside her, his face etched with concern. He had spent years developing the technologies that had propelled humanity into the syndicate's fold, believing them to be tools of progress. But now, those same innovations had revealed a sinister truth. "Alina," Roland began, his voice heavy with the weight of their discoveries, "we've found more evidence. The syndicate's technology, the systems we've integrated into our infrastructure, it's all compromised. There are hidden chips embedded within, designed to monitor and control our actions. Alina's jaw tightened, her fists clenching at her sides. "They've been watching us," she said, her voice low and filled with a cold fury. "Every move, every decision. And we welcomed them with open arms, thinking they were helping us." Roland nodded, his expression grave. "It gets worse. The medical treatments they've introduced, the ones we thought were curing diseases, they re-altering our DNA. Suppressing traits like defiance, ambition, independence. They're reshaping us into something compliant." A heavy silence settled over the room, the enormity of their situation pressing down on them like a physical weight. Alina felt a chill run through her, a mix of fear and betrayal. They had trusted the syndicate, believed in their promises of unity and advancement. Now, that trust had been shattered, revealing a reality far darker than she had ever imagined. "They've given us a leash," Alina said finally, her voice tinged with bitterness. "And we didn't even notice. We thought we were partners, but we're just pawns in their game." Roland met her gaze, his eyes reflecting the same determination that burned within her. "We need to act, Alina. Quickly. If we don't, we'll lose everything that makes us who we are." Alina nodded, her resolve hardening. "We have to find a way to reverse this, to break free of their control. Humanity's future depends on it." The room fell silent once more, the gravity of their mission clear. They were up against an ancient and powerful force, one that had manipulated and controlled countless species before them. But Alina knew that humanity was resilient, capable of defying the odds and forging its own path. As the last light of day faded from the sky, Alina and Roland began to formulate a plan, their minds racing with possibilities and strategies. They would need allies, resources, and the element of surprise. But most of all, they needed hope, the hope that they could reclaim their destiny and ensure that humanity's spirit remained unbroken. In that moment, Alina vowed that they would not go quietly into the night. They would fight for their freedom, for their future, and for the right to choose their own path among the stars. In the shadowed corridors of power, a quiet rebellion was taking shape. The decision had been made to withdraw from the syndicate, but it had to be done with the utmost subtlety. Humanity could not afford an open conflict with such a formidable entity. Instead, they would slip away like shadows at dusk, leaving no trace of their intentions until it was too late for the syndicate to react. Cassandra Holt, a seasoned diplomat known for her poise and strategic mind, took the lead in this delicate operation. Her role was crucial, as she navigated the intricate web of syndicate politics with a grace that belied the tension simmering beneath her calm exterior. She began by subtly rotating human personnel out of key syndicate facilities, citing health concerns as the official reason. Each move was calculated, each explanation carefully crafted to avoid suspicion. Cassandra's presence in syndicate meetings was marked by a serene confidence. She spoke of human vulnerabilities with a sincerity that masked the true intent behind her words. "Our people are experiencing health issues due to prolonged exposure to unfamiliar environments," she would explain, her voice steady and reassuring. The syndicate members, accustomed to her straightforwardness, nodded in understanding, never suspecting the deeper strategy at play. Meanwhile, across the vast expanse of space, military ships began reporting a series of technical issues. These glitches, though minor, were enough to necessitate their return to human space for repairs. Once back, they quietly remained, their absence from syndicate operations explained away with plausible excuses. The ships, like the personnel, would not return. Central to this grand deception was Dr. Nancy Blake, a psychologist whose expertise in human behavior was unparalleled. Her reports to the syndicate leadership were masterful works of misdirection. She framed the subtle changes in human activity as symptoms of integration anxiety, a temporary phase that was to be expected as humanity adjusted to its new role within the syndicate. In her reports, Nancy described how humans were naturally resistant to change, prone to bouts of anxiety when faced with new and unfamiliar circumstances. Her words were crafted to soothe, to convince the Syndicate Council that patience was the key to ensuring a smooth integration. Given time, she assured them, these behaviors will subside as humans become more accustomed to their surroundings. The Syndicate, eager to maintain the illusion of unity and cooperation, accepted her explanations without question. They saw no reason to doubt the sincerity of their human allies, unaware that the very behaviors they were dismissing as temporary were part of a larger, calculated withdrawal. As the plan unfolded, there was an undercurrent of tension among those involved. Each step was fraught with risk, the potential for discovery looming over them like a dark cloud. Yet, there was also a sense of purpose, a shared determination to reclaim humanity's autonomy without triggering a catastrophic conflict. In whispered meetings and coded messages, the architects of this silent withdrawal coordinated their efforts, each playing their part with precision and care. They knew that the success of their plan depended not just on their ability to deceive the syndicate, but also on their unity and resolve. As the days passed, the withdrawal continued, unnoticed by the syndicate. Humanity was slipping away, quietly and efficiently, leaving behind only the faintest echoes of their presence. It was a dangerous game, but one they were determined to win. In the quiet moments, when the weight of their actions pressed heavily upon them, those involved found solace in the knowledge that they were fighting for something greater than themselves. They were fighting for the right to choose their own destiny, to forge a future free from the chains of control. And so, with each passing day, humanity moved one step closer to freedom, their silent withdrawal a testament to their resilience and ingenuity. In the cold, towering chambers of the Syndicate's Council Hall, Chancellor Raxer stood motionless, his scaled, emerald green skin glinting faintly under the soft, artificial light. His slitted eyes, sharp and calculating, swept over the gathered leaders with a quiet intensity. The air in the room was heavy with tension, the kind that lingered before a storm. Raxer's voice, low and gravelly, broke the uneasy silence. "They're not experiencing problems," he said, each word deliberate, his tone carrying the weight of certainty. "Humans are not struggling to adapt. They are preparing for something." His gaze flicked between the faces of his fellow council members, studying their reactions like a predator watching prey. The council chamber, vast and circular, was filled with representatives of the syndicate's many species, each seated in their designated sectors. Their appearances were as varied as their worlds, some with shimmering, translucent bodies that pulsed faintly with light, others encased in thick, chitinous armor, or shrouded in dark robes that concealed their forms entirely. Yet, despite their differences, they all shared one thing, an air of unease. Raxer's words had struck a nerve. Prime Minister Valera, a tall, ethereal figure with skin like liquid silver, leaned forward, her expression calm but her voice tinged with skepticism. "Chancellor, humanity is young. Their actions are erratic, yes, but that is to be expected. Integration has always been a difficult process for new members of the syndicate. They are fragile creatures, prone to fear and anxiety." Raxer's eyes narrowed, his forked tongue flicking out briefly in irritation. "Fragile," he repeated, his voice laced with disdain. "Do not mistake their outward appearance for weakness. Humans are cunning. They adapt quickly, and they hide their intentions well. Look at the patterns. their personnel withdrawals, their ships returning to their space, they are not coincidences. They are calculated moves. At this, General Korat, a hulking, armored figure with a voice like grinding stone, slammed a massive fist onto the table, the sound echoing through the chamber. If they are preparing for something, he growled, then we should strike first. Crush their rebellion before it begins. Show them the price of defiance. The room erupted into murmurs, some in agreement, others in protest. Valera raised a delicate hand, her movements fluid and precise, calling for order. We cannot risk open conflict, she said firmly, her voice rising above the noise. Not without clear evidence. Humanity has contributed much to the syndicate. To act against them without cause would destabilize everything we have built. And to do nothing, Raxer countered, his voice sharp and cutting, would be to invite disaster. Humans are not like the others who have joined us. They do not submit easily. They do not forget. If we allow them to continue unchecked, they will become a threat we cannot contain. The debate raged on, the council divided. Some, like Valera, argued for patience, believing that humanity's actions were born of fear and confusion rather than rebellion. Others, like Korat, pushed for immediate military action, unwilling to take the risk that Raxer's suspicions might be correct. As the voices rose and clashed, Raxer stood silently, his piercing gaze fixed on the center of the chamber. He could feel the tension in the room, the uncertainty that gripped the council. The syndicate, for all its power and unity, was not immune to division. And in that division, Raxer saw danger. Finally, the council leader, a towering, crystalline entity whose voice resonated like a deep chime, called for silence. We will not act in haste, it said, its words carrying a weight that silenced the room. But neither will we ignore the Chancellor's concerns. We will observe humanity closely. If their actions prove to be a threat, we will respond accordingly. Raxer inclined his head, though his expression remained grim. He knew that observation alone would not be enough. Humans were masters of deception, and every moment the syndicate delayed was a moment humanity could use to strengthen their position. As the council session adjourned, Raxer lingered, his mind racing. He could feel the threads of a conspiracy tightening around them, invisible but undeniable. Humanity was playing a dangerous game, and Raxer was determined to uncover their plans before it was too late. In the quiet of the now empty chamber, he allowed himself a moment of reflection. The humans had underestimated the syndicate before, but Raxer would not make the same mistake. He would watch, he would wait, and when the time came, he would strike. The chamber was silent, the kind of silence that pressed against the skin, heavy and suffocating. The air seemed to tremble with the weight of what was about to be spoken. Admiral Marcus Kane stood tall at the center of the Syndicate Council, his dark uniform crisp, his face carved from stone. His eyes, sharp and unflinching, swept over the gathered leaders, meeting their gazes one by one. There was no fear in his stance, only a quiet, unyielding resolve. When he spoke, his voice was steady, each word striking the air like the toll of a bell. We will no longer participate in your systems, he declared, his tone firm but devoid of malice. Humanity seeks only to govern itself, to decide its own fate. We wish for peaceful relations, but we will not remain under your authority. The words hung in the air, echoing through the vast hall. For a moment, no one moved. The syndicate leaders, representatives of countless worlds and species, sat frozen in their seats. Their faces, so alien yet so expressive in their own ways, betrayed a mixture of shock, confusion, and, in some cases, anger. No species had ever left the syndicate voluntarily. The very idea was unthinkable, an affront to the unity the syndicate claimed to represent. Chancellor Raxer was the first to break the silence. His reptilian eyes narrowed into slits, and his voice, low and venomous, cut through the stillness. "You dare to defy the syndicate," he hissed, his sharp teeth glinting as he spoke. "Do you understand what you are doing, Admiral Kane? What this means?" Kane's expression did not waver. "I understand perfectly," he replied, his voice calm but unyielding. "Humanity has given much to the syndicate, but we have paid a price for it. We have lost too much of ourselves. This is not rebellion. It is a declaration of independence." The council erupted into chaos. Voices rose, overlapping in a cacophony of anger, disbelief, and fear. Some shouted accusations, others warnings. General Corrida's booming voice drowned out the others as he stood, his massive frame towering over the assembly. "This is treason," he roared, his armored fist slamming into the table with enough force to crack its surface. "They must be punished. Their defiance cannot go unanswered." But not all voices joined his. Prime Minister Valera, her silver form shimmering faintly in the dim light, raised a hand for calm. "Enough," she said, her voice soft but commanding. The room quieted, though tension still crackled in the air like a storm waiting to break. Her luminous eyes turned to Kane, studying him with a mixture of curiosity and caution. "Admiral, you must know what this will mean. The syndicate cannot simply allow a member species to leave. It would set a precedent. It would weaken us all." Kane met her gaze without flinching. "Humanity does not seek to weaken the syndicate," he said. "We seek only to protect what is ours. Our colonies are fortified, our people prepared. We do not wish for war, but we will defend ourselves if necessary." The words were a challenge, but they were spoken without arrogance or threat. They were the simple truth, and that truth hung heavy in the air. The syndicate leaders exchanged glances, their expressions betraying the doubts and fears that had begun to creep into their minds. They knew what Kane said was true. Humanity's colonies had become strong, their defenses formidable. A war would be costly, and the syndicate's unity was already fragile. Raxer's voice broke the uneasy silence. "This is madness," he spat, his slitted eyes blazing with fury. "You think you can stand against us? Against the might of the syndicate?" Kane's gaze turned to him, steady and unyielding. "We do not wish to stand against you," he said. "But we will, if we must." The council fell silent again, the weight of Kane's words settling over them like a shroud. The tension in the room was palpable, a living thing that seemed to coil tighter with each passing moment. Corrida's fists clenched, his massive form trembling with barely restrained fury, but even he hesitated. The syndicate was powerful, but war with humanity would not be easy. It would not be clean. And it might not be worth the cost. Finally, the crystalline leader of the council, its voice resonating like the chime of a great bell, spoke. "We will deliberate," it said, its tone calm but heavy with authority. "This matter is not to be decided in haste." Kane inclined his head, a gesture of respect, though his expression remained unreadable. "Take the time you need," he said. "But know this, humanity's decision is final. We will not return to the syndicate's fold." With that, he turned and walked away, his footsteps echoing through the chamber. The eyes of every council member followed him, their gazes heavy with a mixture of anger, fear, and, for some, a grudging respect. Kane's figure disappeared through the great doors, leaving the council to their deliberations. In the silence that followed, the leaders of the syndicate sat, their thoughts racing. Humanity's declaration had shaken them to their core. For the first time in centuries, the unity of the syndicate had been challenged, and the cracks in its foundation were beginning to show. The stars seemed to burn brighter over the hidden world of Sirith, a planet cloaked in secrecy, where whispers of rebellion had grown into a steady hum of hope. Beneath its violet skies, amidst sprawling forests of crystalline trees that shimmered like glass, a gathering of beings from countless worlds stood united. They were survivors, refugees, and dreamers, those who had fled the syndicate's grip, their hearts ignited by humanity's defiance. Dr. Myra Caldwell stood at the center of the gathering, her presence a beacon of quiet strength. She was not a soldier, nor a politician, but her sharp mind and unshakable resolve had made her one of humanity's most respected leaders. Her dark hair was streaked with silver, and her eyes, though tired, burned with determination. Around her, the leaders of the independent worlds Accord, the fledgling alliance born from humanity's rebellion, listened intently, their forms as varied as the stars themselves. Speaker Elrath, a towering figure with skin like polished obsidian and eyes that glowed faintly blue, stepped forward. His voice, deep and resonant, carried a weight that silenced the murmurs of the crowd. "You've shown us that freedom is possible," he said, his gaze fixed on Caldwell. "For generations, we believed the syndicate was unshakable, that their control was absolute. But you've given us the courage to fight for it." Myra's heart swelled with both pride and sorrow. She could see the scars on these people, both the visible ones that marred their bodies and the invisible ones that haunted their eyes. They had suffered under the syndicate's rule, their lives dictated by laws that served only those in power. And yet, here they stood, defiant and unbroken. "It wasn't easy," Myra replied, her voice steady but laced with emotion. "Humanity paid a price for our defiance. We lost lives, homes, and so much more. But we gained something greater, our freedom. And now, we stand with you. Together, we are stronger than the syndicate ever imagined." Elrath nodded, his expression solemn but resolute. Around him, the other leaders murmured their agreement. There was Speaker Thulra, a delicate, insectoid being whose translucent wings shimmered in the dim light, Governor Reiner, a hulking, armored figure with a voice like distant thunder, and countless others, each representing a world or a people who had chosen to break free from the syndicate's grasp. As the meeting continued, the scope of their rebellion became clear. Trade routes were shifting, cutting off the syndicate's lifeblood. Resources that once flowed freely to their core worlds were now being redirected to the Accord. Hidden colonies, fortified and supplied by humanity, had become sanctuaries for those fleeing the syndicate's reach. The syndicate's authority, once absolute, was beginning to crumble. But with hope came danger. The syndicate would not stand idly by as their power slipped away. Myra knew this, and so did the others. Every victory they achieved brought them closer to open war, a war that would test their fragile alliance to its limits. As the meeting drew to a close, Elrath turned to Myra once more. "You've lit a fire," he said, his voice heavy with both gratitude and caution. "But the syndicate will try to extinguish it. They will come for us, and when they do, we must be ready." "We will be," Myra assured him, her voice firm. "Humanity has faced the syndicate before, and we've survived. Together, we will do more than survive. We will thrive." Elrath's glowing eyes softened, and for a moment, the weight of his burden seemed to lift. "Then let this be the beginning of something greater," he said. "Not just freedom for our people, but a future where no one lives under the shadow of fear." The leaders of the Accord raised their voices in agreement, their words blending into a harmonious chorus that echoed through the chamber. Myra stood among them, her heart heavy with the knowledge of what lay ahead, but also filled with a hope she hadn't felt in years. Outside, under the vast expanse of the galaxy, the ripple effect of humanity's defiance spread further. On distant worlds, whispers of rebellion grew louder. In the shadows of syndicate-controlled cities, resistance movements began to stir. And on Sirath, beneath its shimmering skies, a new alliance prepared to face the storm that was coming. The galaxy had shifted in ways once thought impossible. A year had passed since humanity's bold declaration, and the stars now bore witness to a new era. Human ships, sleek and resilient, moved with purpose through the vastness of space, their paths unbound by the Syndicate's once iron grip. The Syndicate's patrols watched from a distance, their presence a shadow of former authority, hesitant to provoke the very conflict they feared could unravel them. On Earth, the air was thick with the scent of change. In classrooms filled with the laughter and curiosity of children, stories of independence and courage replaced old tales of submission and compliance. Young minds like that of Noah Ramirez absorbed these lessons eagerly, their imaginations ignited by the idea of a future where freedom was not just a dream but a reality. They learned of the struggles and triumphs that had paved the way for this new dawn, their hearts swelling with pride and determination. In the corridors of power, the Syndicate faced an uncertain future. Their once unquestioned dominance was now challenged by the rising tide of rebellion. Species across the galaxy, inspired by humanity's defiance, began to demand their own freedom, their voices growing louder with each passing day. The Syndicate, built on the foundation of compliance, found itself standing on shaky ground. Prime Minister Valera, a figure of grace and wisdom, stood by the window of her office, gazing out at the stars. Her thoughts were heavy with reflection. She was a leader who had once believed in the strength of unity, but now she saw the cracks in the facade. "We built our power on the compliance of the weak," she mused aloud, her voice tinged with both regret and admiration. "But humanity has shown us the strength of those who refuse to be weak." Her words echoed in the quiet room, a testament to the profound shift that had taken place. The Syndicate, once a symbol of unyielding control, now faced the reality of a galaxy that no longer bowed to its will. The future was uncertain, but it was also filled with possibilities that had never been imagined. Aboard the exploration vessel Aurora's Edge, Captain Lila Morgan stood on the bridge, her eyes fixed on the expanse of neutral space before her. The ship hummed with life around her, its crew a mix of seasoned explorers and eager newcomers, all united by a common purpose. The stars stretched out in an endless tapestry, each point of light a beacon of hope and discovery. As the Aurora's Edge crossed into neutral space, Syndicate ships hovered at the edge of their sensors, their presence a silent acknowledgement of the new order. They watched, but did not interfere, their hesitation a sign of the uncertainty that now plagued them. Lila's lips curved into a smile, a quiet triumph in the face of what had once seemed insurmountable. "They're not sure they can stop us anymore," she murmured, her voice carrying a mixture of defiance and hope. Her words were a promise to her crew, to humanity, and to all those who had dared to dream of freedom. The Syndicate's hold was loosening, and with it came the dawn of a new era, one where the stars belonged to all who had the courage to reach for them. Under the vast canopy of the universe, the Aurora's Edge sailed forward, a symbol of the unyielding spirit of those who refused to be bound by fear. And as Lila stood at the helm, the galaxy stretched out before her, a canvas waiting to be painted with the colors of a future forged in freedom.